We're gonna get right into it, guys. How you doing? What's up, Sean?
I'm surviving, man. Jesus, dude. This heat wave is serious, huh? 107 degrees this week. Man, I just like a lot of other people getting my workouts in the garage. I tell you what, man, that heat wave that's taking a number on us for sure.
Normally, I would make fun of Sean about for talking about the weather, but it really is that hot.
It's
Pretty hot.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Jim, what do you got? What do you got going on, man?
Well, I'm actually a little older than I was this time last week.
Ooh.
I suffered a birthday over the weekend.
Man,
I turned it's a milestone birthday. I turned 50,
Mm.
50. That's a 5 with a 0 after it.
it's fairly.
And approaching 50, I thought it was going to be awful. I thought,
Oh.
once I hit 50, it's just, I guess I might as well just lay down so I don't fall down. But it's surprisingly,
you seem like you're in good shape, man.
I seem that way. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Justin, what about you, man? What's going on?
Just been along with the awful weather. It's been not as awful as usual, man. I took a drive out to. This will touch on what we're talking about later on, but I took about a 50-minute drive out to another county outside of the city to vote the other day because I did not change my address and request a mail-in ballot, and I'm registered in said county. So it was about a 50-minute drive to go vote, but got it done, and I only saw one Confederate flag in the process. So it was a pretty
That's a short drive to avoid fraud. you know? I'm glad you did your civic duty.
Yeah.
though.
Not for nothing, but you could have voted by mail.
I had to. And then also, man, this is hopefully the first of many, but I want to give a shout out to Southerly Brewing here in San Antonio, man. They supplied us with some cool growlers for today. We've got the Darwinian IPA and the Gold Lager here on the show today. So thanks,
That's awesome.
Southerly.
That's awesome. Nice job.
Yeah,
Southerly,
yeah.
Thank you.
So getting straight into it, guys. One of the big dominant headlines in the news has been the looming reality that schools are supposed to reopen soon,
Yeah.
or that school is starting soon. And naturally, given the pandemic and our political climate combined, there's been a huge debate, huge dialogue, and a lot of mudslinging over it. So, fun fact, we've got two guys with kids that go to said schools and one guy who is a teacher in said school. So we might be able to put together somewhat of a conversation.
And
about
one
it.
guy whose wife is a teacher. And
Ooh, that is right.
There we go. So,
So-
I'm kind of just the
I've
third
heard
wheel
of
on
it.
this joint, and I'm just all I can do is provide commentary from the outside. But Sean, fill us in, fill the viewers in, and even if you don't have kids, listen to this because I'm trying to get some perspective from somebody who lives it and works there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate all that, but let me just preface the entire conversation that nobody's hitting my line asking me what I think about, hey, how do you think we should reopen our school, Sean, or anything like that. Definitely at the bottom of the totem pole, like many other teachers, but we are just as concerned as well. So I want to be really clear on my position. I think that if we're able to open schools and do it safely, there is no substitution for in-person instruction at all. I don't think anybody argues with the goal in mind. The problem lies is in the data. I know other countries across the world, they've been reopening. Maybe it's just for summer school. It's not like the traditional school year, but these other countries aren't experiencing we haven't flattened the curve yet. I hate to use that term, flatten the curve, but here in Texas, we're in the thick of it right now. We're still having days where we're having record numbers. And it's responsible of us to ask, is it the time, or do we need to kind of push back? So that's kind of the early onset where I know we're going to get into, all the ins and outs of this, but I just want to be clear that my goal is to also go back. But right now, maybe the data shows that the kids could be safe, but you still have to be concerned about the teachers as well. We got families too. So
I don't know.
Jim, what do you think, man?
I'm, how can you possibly tell, or from any data that's available, that the kids are going to be safe today, maybe, but not tomorrow, and there's still this debate raging about whether masks are effective or harmful. And there are so many questions about opening the schools back up, and literally there are no answers.
Yeah.
You ask a question And the answer is, I don't know. And you really, you know, we're getting down to crunch time here, and you're going to have to start having answers for these things.
Well,
And if you don't have the answers, go forward anyway. I mean, that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Seems like what people are doing, right? They're just kind of going.
Let's just do it.
Yeah, they're making
Find out what
decisions.
happens.
It's okay to say I don't know. Right
Hold
now.
my beer.
Well, no, and to be fair though, there are a few positions that should absolutely have some sort of an answer, even if that answer isn't what people want to hear. So, like Betsy DeVos is on network cable television talking about schools must reopen, and when they're asking her about a plan or they're asking her about CDC guidelines and if that should play a role in reopening and the decision, she does not have an answer. So that's not a partisan thing to say. That's me watching her interview and saying, wow, this is my reasoning behind really despising that appointment is kind of feels justified right now, but it's
And
just not a clue.
And
Not-
despite having no skin directly in the game, you've hit the nail right on the head. That is what everybody is experiencing.
Yeah.
And that ignorance trickles down to every level, because nobody, if they don't know, if she doesn't know, then the people below her don't know,
Yeah.
and the individual school districts won't know.
For those of y'all that don't know, Betsy DeVos is the Secretary of Education. She is the highest figure in the land. You know, the all-knowing when it comes to public education. Although I'm not sure if she's ever actually gone to a public school.
the
I know-
answer to that is no.
I
She's
know
never
the- I
I'm
know
done
not
it.
sure if she's ever been to a school.
I know the president doesn't have a formal public education. He's been in private school his entire life. But Betsy DeVos is interesting. Look, we have an endless amount of conspiracy theories that are circulating social media that are, you know, discounting the science of the CDC and Dr. Fauci. And most of them I don't really look into them very much because I'd brush them off as bullshit. But I would entertain a conspiracy theory that shows that Betsy DeVos is purposely setting up public schools for failure in order to push the privatization of public schools. That's one I can flirt with it a little bit, you know?
Well, no, I mean, we talked about this earlier. Like, not everybody knows, but you know, do you know who Betsy DeVos's brother is?
I used to, but I
It's
drink
Eric-
a lot. And I,
Oh, okay. It's Eric Prince, the former founder and former CEO of Blackwater.
okay.
And so,
yeah.
well, you know, one branch of the family's mission in life is to privatize the military, and the other one's now seemingly is to sabotage public schools to the point of privatization, and the education side as well. So, absolutely, as far as leadership goes, Mike Pence was being interviewed, and this is the quote. Again, I don't think we have very many MAGAs watching our show, but if we do, don't get mad at me about this. I'm just reading the direct quote from what I saw. He said, "We don't want CDC guidance to be a reason why people don't reopen their schools." In what world is that in what world do you feel like you've made a good point by saying that? Like, we don't want public health to dictate our decision making.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
The CDC guidelines they're like the minimal standard. They're like the starting ground for what should happen if we do. Like it is a complete nightmare to start considering, like, how are you going to transport these kids to school? How are you going to do food distribution? How are you going to do scheduling? Like, put all that stuff aside. Put aside the logistical nightmare.
The answer to all those is I don't know, by the way. So
Which is true. Like, put all those things aside. It's still not backed up by the data. Like, again, don't show me data from these other countries that responded in a better way than we did.
You mean the right way?
Yeah.
Shit.
And mind you, the people that they're referencing these countries that are in Western Europe that happen to be, you know,
super progressive. They have single payer healthcare,
Yeah.
like, and they hate you.
it's really selective, right? Like, hey, like, I'm gonna reference how they open their schools and how great they're doing right now, but don't talk to me about their healthcare system.
Oh my goodness!
No way that could
Trump
work here.
listed off those countries the other day, and like, I've lived in 3 of the 5 that he mentioned, and it was just like going down listing like Scandinavian and like Germany, Netherlands. It was just like, yeah, you know, look, they've reopened schools, they don't have fear, and it's just like, first of all, they have healthcare. They guarantee healthcare, and then second of all, most people in all those countries, and definitely those countries' leaders, hate you.
Yeah, he's
Like-
been criticizing him for the last 4 years, right?
And
Now all of a sudden,
now shout out
They
shout
don't
out
know what
Northern
they're
Europe.
doing. They
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing. Oh, I mean, except for when it comes to this.
well, speaking of Trump, man, I wanted to bring this up because he was really early on in kind of forming his opinion and saying he's the media will call it pressuring. I'll say intimidating. Essentially saying if you don't reopen, it can affect your funding for public schools if you don't open up and offer in-person instruction. And so I just wanted to kind of get y'all's early takes on that. I think, you know, in my opinion, he's jumping the gun a little bit. First of all, like it's not really, you know, education is something that's left up to the states. It's been that way for a long time right now. So I'm not really sure where he thinks he has the authority to, you know, stop funding for public school. But what were y'all's early takes on Trump's on his words?
Jimmer?
Well, there is a Department of Education, and there is, like it or not, there is a federal Department of Education, and thank you, Betsy DeVos. But there's funding that goes to the states, federal funding that does go to the states, and you know it is part of the federal budget, and if it's withheld, then that can affect them.
It definitely
So
doesn't make up
it's
the
not
majority.
an empty threat.
Yeah, it isn't an empty threat. I agree with you, but it doesn't make up the majority of funding, right? Like
Agreed.
We all, those of us that are taxpayers and, you know, we're paying those things we see how much we're paying to our local school districts, right? And so just kind of from a perspective of somebody, and I think this is where I can find middle ground with the other side, from a perspective of somebody that really values the principle of federalism, that we should have the autonomy to make our own decisions instead of from a top down, a one size fits all, everybody must open up in August. I certainly think there's rural areas that exist in the country where they're so remote that COVID really hasn't touched them like they have in spots like Texas or in San Antonio or Houston or Florida. And I certainly agree that some areas can open up and do it, you know, by mid-August or whatever their start date is. But what do you say to the people that they value this idea of we have the autonomy to make our own decisions, but Trump comes in and says, wait, I'm going to make this decision for you?
Say no. Okay, keep your funding, dick.
And just,
You know, you're right. This is the kind of thing that a central decision-making figure really needs to leave a lot of this to the individual states and the school districts.
Yeah.
And without doing that, by issuing this edict, in what way is he not a communist?
That's definitely. If
That's
you're
the irony
yeah.
of this.
Well,
is
no,
that's
yeah,
such
that's
a
fair.
communistic thing to
Well,
do.
it's the same thing. The same thing with the back when he was bailing out farmers because of his harmful tariffs with China. Those bailouts, like that's essentially socialism because that's being done with taxpayer dollars, and so that's the entire, you know, that's the calling card of the administration these days, I guess, is cherry pick these things where it suits you. And then attack those same exact terms when it suits you.
Yeah, like
Exactly
when it came to early on in the pandemic, it came like with the PPE. You know, Trump kind of, hey man, that's on y'all. You got to provide your own PPE. What ventilators? That's on. Hey, those are on you.
It's up to the states.
Yeah, that's a state thing. And so again, it's not to be anti-Trump. It's a question of, you know, we haven't gone through a lot of pandemics. Let's be honest. But what is the role of the president in regards to, you know, how far can he stretch his powers, he or she, in response to a national health emergency? That's all we're asking. We're not here to pick on Trump. You know, it could have been anybody.
Whoever it is,
Speak for yourself, Sean.
in this particular case, we are dealing with Trump, and he doesn't seem to be shy about issuing executive orders. So if there's an executive order out there that he could issue to do something to save it, I think it's incumbent on him, as long as it doesn't infringe too much on the already existing established rights of the school districts and states and whatever.
For any teachers out there, including Sean, but for any teachers out there, we've got this is a quote from Lily Eskelsen Garcia. She's the president of the National Education Association. She was on an interview earlier and said, "My advice to all my panicked colleagues: ignore Trump and DeVos, ignore Donald Trump and ignore Betsy DeVos. Listening to them is not good for kids or other living things." And that's just again, that's her quote, not mine, but that's somebody that's in a position of influence when it comes to teachers. And I could understand how educators would be feeling a bit panicked and a bit worried right now, because you doing, in this case, doing your job could be endangering your health.
Yeah.
And you have the chief executive of the country not even, it's not that he disagrees with that, it's that he's not even he's not even taking the time to imagine where they're coming from, and would you expect them to really?
Yeah, I take it from somebody that spread COVID to his family. You know, I spread it to my daughter, my grandma, among other people, and man, I just felt like the lowest person in the world at the time. You know, and I couldn't imagine putting myself in a situation where now I'm affecting my students and my colleagues as well, and I'm being forced to do that. But I do want to take the time. I do want to be a little bit positive, right? I don't want to paint an entire grim picture here. There is a lot of data that does suggest that it's not as bad as, like we talked about early on. The transmission from kids to adults or kids to other kids is relatively low. And again, can the data be new? Yes, it is. It is new. It is fresh, but it is something. I'm not saying we're going to hang our hat on it, but it is something very small to celebrate if we're looking for little celebrations. Okay. So that is there. Could we open up in the fall and have a second wave or third, whatever we're on, right? Absolutely. For sure. Especially for the people that want to, selectively compare this thing to the flu. If it's like the flu, then guess what's going to happen in the flu season? Shit's going to come back. And if we open up our public institutions, public education, specifically what we're talking about today, we have there definitely presents itself an opportunity where the worst case scenario could happen. Absolutely. And as a teacher, I will say this, it's like, don't be surprised if come the fall and the winter, if things get really bad, if you start seeing massive demonstrations and massive walkouts from teachers, because you're putting them in a position. Again, you're talking about a profession that's historically underpaid. Okay. And I'm not here to talk about the pay of teachers or anything, but let's be honest, like they could probably find another job that's going to pay them just as much, where they don't have to sacrifice or compromise their health or the health of their family at the same time. Would it be hard? It would be hard today because a lot of people are hurting to find a job, but it's not out of this world. Does that make sense? We're not tied down to this profession is what I'm saying. And so I just want to be, I just kind of want people to be cautious here when you make these decisions. Say, yeah, send our kids back, because if shit hits the fan, don't be surprised when those kids are in the classroom, they look around, there's not a teacher there, man.
Yep.
What are you going to do with the substitute?
This is my point before we transition. If schools were shut down in March, right? More or less, if schools were shut down in March and things have gotten worse since March, how do you justify reopening? And furthermore, if jail sentences can be commuted for Paul Manafort and for Michael Cohen because of COVID, how is it safe to send kids back to school? How do you justify that? So if and these are high profile administration linked felons that I'm talking about, but if their sentences are commuted, or if they're relegated to house arrest because of COVID, how do you justify sending kids back to school?
You can't do it. You literally can't do it. And this is the kind of logical inconsistency that is kind of the hallmark of what's been going on lately.
Well, moving on here, guys, we've I don't know if you've noticed, but this is an election year.
Oh
shit.
Damn.
Yeah. So we've got
calls.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. We've got close races in places that typically are not close. Typically they are places where the blue side, if you have to break it down to colors, is pretty much just a figurehead and pretty much just getting set up to get knocked down. But
just write those couple of those states off.
Yeah,
usually.
And so now there are a few important, fairly well populated red states that are not as distant as they used to be. Those being Texas, Arizona, and Florida, to name a few. And they've had some close races. Do you guys think that the winds of change are in the air? Do you think that there's a shift happening that we might not see yet, but that you see in November? Where do you think there'll be any major surprises coming from this shift?
I'll give my real early take and pass it to Jim over here. I know we're going to talk about the silent majority later. And I don't think that they're the majority right now. I think most people are vocal at this point and they've taken a position of where they want to be. But I don't feel it just quite yet. I don't think there's enough enthusiasm from the left. Like just off the top of my head, I can't think of.
Sean, you mean after their most popular, most influential personality got kind of cheated and shot down and done dirty by the DNC, you mean that there's not excitement anymore?
I just don't see people running to the polls in November during a pandemic to show up. And again,
show out for Joe Biden.
I hope I'm wrong, but that's just like if I was a betting man and they said, "Hey, put your money down, Sean. What do you think is going to happen?" I think the silent majority they're going to show up and they're going to sway this election just the same way they did in 2016.
I think that this is better really dug into a little bit later when we talk about that. But I do think the polls do tell us a story. They tell us a story, but they don't. There's no way they give us an accurate picture, because as we found out in 2016, if polls were to be believed, then Hillary Clinton would be president right now.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, and at the moment, that's kind of the debate is, do you believe the polls? And right now, even polls that are typically seen as favorable to the conservative side, polls shouldn't really, I don't think they should have a bias, but even the polls that the current president of the United States touts all the time, or used to tout all the time, even those polls are showing him as the underdog in November, which is odd for an incumbent in general. But
I mean, it is odd, but at the same time, like there's a lot of people that are frustrated with COVID. Like I'm not, hey, I'll probably be the first person up here to criticize the man, but I also want to try as much as possible to find middle ground. Like, again, it doesn't matter who would have been in charge. Like, people are frustrated. Okay. And like, when we're talking about some of the specific races, maybe not getting into the governor and the Senate races and stuff that are going to come up in 2020, but I'm really looking forward to see, like, what are states like Florida and Michigan who had polar opposite responses to COVID, right? You had Governor Whitmer and Governor DeSantis. One's going to keep the state open as much as possible. The other one's going to have one of the strictest lockdowns. Are those voters going to vote emotionally come November based upon how their governors and their political party handled the election? I think then those are two states that are going to play a fairly big role in 2020.
It's America. Of course, they're going to vote emotionally.
Their opponents would be stupid if they didn't exploit that. So that's going to prompt that.
Well, and isn't that kind of, I mean, that's where we're at, right? It's sad to imagine that a pandemic response, or that a pandemic is a political tool at this point. So it's like, even if you weren't politicizing it when it first struck, now it is very much a tool in November, like if you're a Republican challenger or if you're a Democratic challenger, it's now a tactic.
It's become political. Yeah, we can't avoid it at this point.
And these aspects of our everyday life that really the president has very little to do with, people are still going to go flying.
They're still going to vote that way.
When the stock market took a dump in March, right up until then, all the Trumpers were saying, "Look what our president's done for the stock market." And I said, the president didn't do anything about that. It's continuing what it was already doing for the past.
Let me add on to that, Jim. Like right now, like I lost a lot of, like, thousands and thousands of dollars, just like everybody else did that has money on the stock market. But as of right now, like, it's completely bounced back. Now, mind you, there's still 30 million Americans that had a job before March that don't have one right now. So the stock market is not the best indicator of how the American economy is doing. Like I said, like, I've made money since March.
Yes.
What does that have to say about the 30 million Americans that didn't go to work today because of the pandemic?
They are definitely not making money.
Yeah.
Great point. A lot of that probably has to do with the stimulus, but where I was going was after March, when it took a dump, all the liberals, not all of them, but plenty on my Facebook page or friend
Jim's
list.
Facebook is a good time
It's a
for those
wild
of you that
time.
don't know.
It's
It's
a
very
wild
very
time.
good time.
They were all, hey, Trump sucks. Look at the stock market, and then it bounced back. I'm way ahead in the stock market from when I was
Yeah.
in March at the peak. It's not Trump's fault that it went down. He doesn't get credit for it going back up.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
So now with the check this out. So what we were mentioning some states that are typically red that are wavering if you're on the Republican side. Yesterday was a big deal. So I told you I drove my ass about just under an hour to go one way to go vote yesterday.
God bless you, citizen.
Yeah, that guy didn't win, but it's okay.
Idiot.
Yeah, idiot. But
waste of gas.
yeah, there was. I don't know if you had this in your 2020 bingo card, but progressives had a huge one big yesterday in Texas. I think three out of the four major progressive candidates won their runoffs and are now going to be facing off with Republicans on the national level. And it wasn't really a predictable thing.
And that's important, and it maybe lends a little more credence to those polls. The ones that we were just talking about, where Biden is, closer in Texas than anybody anticipated he would be. Maybe there's a general shift, and maybe these runoffs yesterday.
Well, and
tell us that.
I don't want to. Who am I kidding? Yes, I do want to be that guy. The results from yesterday further cemented the belief in my mind that there's no way that Biden legitimately beat Bernie in Texas.
Agreed.
There's no way. And so if we're talking about some northern states or whatever, I don't see it, because Bernie-backed candidates did their thing yesterday, won really big, and that's because Bernie had people on the ground here, and so now he shifted. Now that he suspended his campaign a few months ago, he shifted all his support to lower races here in the state, and so that infrastructure was still there. That those people on the ground were still there, and they won really big. So just those three, winning 3 out of 4, and then also, so notably, that's Mike Siegel won the 10th district. That's in Austin. Donna Imam won the 31st district, also in Austin. And then Candace Valenzuela won the 24th district, all for the House. And then Jose Garza was a Bernie-endorsed candidate that won the nomination for the district attorney of Travis County. So Austin area, Dallas area victories. And again, nobody can convince me that Joe Biden legitimately beat Bernie in Texas after those kind of wins.
You do have to remember, though, that in Austin, that kind of thing is not as shocking as it might be somewhere else.
In Austin, it's not, but in Dallas, it certainly is.
Yes, definitely.
I've heard a lot of talks recently. Have y'all heard about people flirting with the idea that this might be the year that Texas flips blue? Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, Joe Biden is not the candidate, and 2020 is not the year. I think maybe it's just wishful thinking. Maybe it flips by the time I'm alive, but I'm not banking on it. I'll probably move away from Texas before we flip blue. So for him spending campaign money over here and running ads, hey, Joe Biden, I know you don't know who I am and you don't care, but let me just give you some advice. You can spend that money elsewhere, man.
77-year-old Joe Biden is not the kind of guy to mobilize a bunch of voters who wouldn't have given a damn otherwise.
Yeah. To be fair, he is a 90s style Republican, but yeah, he's not going to be the guy to galvanize a state and flip it at all. But yeah, that was just for me, man. That even though the long drive that I made yesterday didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to, as far as wins and losses go, there's a strikingly high number of moderate Democrats, which in real speak means Republican. But there are a lot of moderate Democrats who are former fighter pilots. It's such a weird thing. There's 3 or 4 that run at the national level, and it's just I guess that's the military prototype to run for national office.
You have to do
fighter pilots. It's all because of Top Gun, really.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You can't be too extreme if you're going to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
You can't be a Tea Party weirdo.
No, and so
Did I say weirdo? I didn't mean that.
It's okay. They are weirdos. So right now, again, the situation politically in this country is quite painful. If you've got pain,
I do.
maybe try some CBD stuff. Yeah, go to Natural Heights. That's on 1880 Nacogdoches Road, or you can call ahead because schedules aren't what they used to be at 210-592-1060. CBD stuff, it's on the rise here in town. Again, if you've got pain for pretty much any reason, hit them up, see what's going on. Also, shout out Southerly again for the awesome beer that we're consuming today.
Amazing.
It's here in the Pearl in San Antonio, and for me personally, probably it's one of the coolest places in the Pearl, and for sure the best beer. So
10 to 10.
thanks again, guys.
10 out of 10. I like it.
It's a big one. So moving on here, guys, we've got some sports, and at the moment there's a huge shift in the country going on because of the aforementioned political issues, and against all odds, the Washington Redskins are changing their name.
Sports in the loosest sense of the word with the Redskins over the last couple of decades, but
All,
they're still
hey,
in the league. So.
I heard all 15 of their fans are enraged.
Man, well, fun fact for
I got to get rid of all my gear.
Yeah, fun fact for the viewers: Jim here is a lifelong Redskins fan.
Not lifelong. Well, I was 12.
Almost.
I was
That's a
12
long.
when
That's a long time,
yeah.
Jim. But yeah, big time Redskins fan here, and also I guess masochist.
It has not been easy.
Yeah, and you know, if you like teams that perennially, finish at the bottom of the NFC East, that's fine. But Jim, I want to ask you first: how do you feel first? Because I'm concerned for you as a friend, and then secondly, what's your take on the name change? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And what, if any, social implications does it have?
For many years, I didn't give a rat's ass about the fact that they were called the Redskins. All right, so I guess that's just a name for Indians because I see an Indian on the side of the helmet.
Right.
And I didn't really care. And then I heard that there was a big problem with it.
Big
And then I really looked into, yeah, well, I get that a lot too. And then I looked into it and I found out that it was basically just one lady from a tribe somewhere that was raising a big stink about it. And I said, well, nobody else seems to care about it. It seemed to be a self-identifier among American Indians. So I just let it go.
Yeah.
Well, now this all comes out and I find out that it's been a bigger deal than I expected. So it's about time.
Sean?
I don't want to be negative. I just
Come on! It's not that hard. Just do
Do
it.
it.
I
Just
don't-
do it. Be
yeah.
negative. Just be fucking negative.
let's be real, I just don't know how much change is going to come from this, man. Like,
Nothing is going to come
what
from it.
really changes?
It's symbolic, just
There-
like what the Washington Bullets changed
The
to the
Washington
Washington
Bullets.
Wizards.
So look, in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, the Washington Redskins, or formerly Washington Redskins, they're going to choose a new name that's politically correct.
Washington Generals,
The Generals,
perennial losers they are.
The Red Tails.
the Warriors. Right? I've heard all these different names that they're flirting with the idea of. But what's going to happen is Nike, who has the apparel contract with the NFL, they're going to, okay, what did y'all, well, the Warriors? Okay. And then Nike's just going to proceed to tell their sweatshops, hey, we've made a politically correct move. We're going to need y'all to catch up. And so it kind of just all boils back to like, we're just picking and choosing what's important to us. Where do we draw the line again? Because people are going to get tired of it.
I mean, you are talking about $1 billion industry, like multi-billion-dollar industry, though, with a name that is offensive to.
for sure, without a
Yeah.
doubt.
So I'm not saying that some massive social change is going to come of it, but they've been pressured for a very long time, and it's a bit different, right? If you're a country that has historically not just oppressed but exterminated people of a certain heritage, and then you use a racially insensitive or offensive name to describe a sports team that's on. It's not some third league team. It's not even a high school team. Like, I for a time went to a high school called the Indians, and I guess the girls team was called the Squaws, which I actually think, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of offensive. But yeah, this is a team that's part of a multi-billion-dollar industry that fills stadiums with people and that has gear around the country and all that. So, like I said, I don't know what tangible result it'll have. It'll just be kind of nice that the biggest sports league in the country doesn't have that one.
Yeah, just acknowledging it, right? Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be insensitive at all. Native Americans are arguably the most underrepresented group in the country. I just go back to, is this tangible change? Could we, or what else could we do? Could we offer, I know that they're talking about giving the Native Americans a delegate in Congress. Like it's a non-voting delegate, so they're not able to actually vote on particular issues, but it's still a voice. It's a voice that can serve on committees, which is it's a big deal to be represented in some fashion. So maybe we can add to delegates that we've promised in treaties back in the 19th century. Maybe we can hold true to this.
Promised in treaties and broken repeatedly.
There are a couple of potential benefits, not least of which is we'll stop talking about it if they change their name, right? It'll stop being an issue, right?
Yeah.
But given the climate now after the George Floyd problem, murder,
there you go.
I think they call it.
Yeah, there you
go. The Red Tails. You brought up the Red Tails. The Red Tails is a nod to the Tuskegee Airmen and African American pilots from World War II. They painted the tail of their planes red, and that was their nickname. So that would kind of be certainly topical, and it would. I don't know why anybody would have a problem with that 50 years from now.
Well, and and wouldn't that kind of make sense? So I mean, I already know what quite a few fans and just general people, general sports fans in general would have to say about that would be, well, why would you call it the Red Tails if why would you put focus on one group? And it's like, well, your team was called the Redskins for many, many years, and
establishing heritage.
Well, no, yeah, and if you look at the demographics of the league, it's like, well, this is a predominantly African American league, as are many, as are the top two sports leagues in the country, and why would it be such a bad thing to call them the Red Tails? So I mean, I'm not co-signing that in general, but I don't see a problem with it at all
I would never have a problem
because it's part of the history of what is probably, I think it's close to 80% of the league's demographic.
If I were a raging racist, I would have a problem with it, but at this point, I do not have.
Yeah, if you're a racist, that's the worst thing that could be called.
Red Tail Nation. It kind of rolls off the tongue.
It really does. It really does.
It has kind of a ring to it.
By the way, I did see something on my Facebook feed. Somebody was bothering me with some pictures, and one of the pictures was a picture of it was a red potato. Problem solved. You don't have to change the name at all. You're welcome, America.
We did it.
Damn it. So, and the next thing that we've got here, TBT has been going on, the basketball tournament. We talked about it a bit. Sean and I have been following it loosely. Jim's been following not at all, but he is now. So
yeah, I heard about it.
Yeah. He heard about it today.
Now that it's over,
it's a thing.
Yeah. So for those of you that are not aware,
it's been going on for a couple of years.
Yeah. For every summer, large basketball tournament, single elimination, and the prize has generally been $2 million, but because of the costs of safety measures and that, this year it's been $1 million. Yeah, and then last night had a game winner by Travis Diener to win $1 million. Do you guys think that the importance of something like TBT is now it's a bit more informal than having to restart an entire major worldwide sports league? But what do you guys takes on TBT, and do you think that its relevance is kind of increased because of the pandemic?
I didn't watch too many. I probably watched like 4 or 5. It's probably more than y'all guys. And I don't want to say that it's entirely a different sport. It's never gonna draw the attention that the NBA is gonna do. But the way that tournament was officiated with the referees, that alone changes the entire experience as a fan. Because in the NBA, you can't get away with like a couple hand checks. If it's real physical, they're gonna call that thing. They're gonna keep it real tight. They're gonna protect their stars. In TBT, it's kind of like anything goes. Like you can 2 hands excessively. So it absolutely changes the entire nature of the game to where it's a different experience for the audience as well.
A defender like Sean would thrive in that system because he will be in your shit. Like, aggressive defenders in TBT, like to me, their value.
Yeah. They might as well give you 10 fouls. Shit.
Well, because I mean, the way that it is, they play up to a certain score, right? So,
and I do like that.
Yeah, that's cool. So there's a target. There's a target score. They play up to that, and so it kind of it emphasizes the importance of each possession. But obviously you don't want the game to be decided by penalty free throws.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't want the game to be decided by one of the best players fouling out on some bullshit like touch fouls from 40 feet out. So it's much more physical, and it's just fun to watch. But yeah, I think the ending last night was about as cool as it could have been for the momentum of TBT going forward, because Guy hadn't played very much prior to that, and then just steps up and hits what amounts to $1 million shot for him and his teammates. It's pretty cool.
That Elam ending, I believe they call it. Essentially, what it is at the first dead ball after the last 4 minutes of play, they set a target score. So let's say the team winning has 70. Well, that target score is 78. The first team to get to 78 is going to win that basketball game. So it kind of changes it into a possession game like you were talking about, but it's an entirely different experience. I know that the NBA kind of they flirted with it during the All-Star game, and I think it got great reviews. It's something that a lot of people are saying could possibly make its way into professional sports, which would be a huge game changer. But like for what Justin said, like the game ended and it was like a 5-point game. It was 78-73, but when that guy knocked down the shot, it feels like a game winner. And that's what we want. Like, how many games have we watched? Like, I don't want to reference football because it's way different than basketball, but like, snapping the ball and taking a knee or just dribbling the clock out at the end. That's not exciting at all.
No. Like,
regardless of whoever wins, like it feels like a game winner every single time. So I think it's a great experience as a fan, as a viewer, and I think it's really interesting to see if it kind of goes anywhere from where it is now, how it develops and grows.
I really do love the idea of there's no such thing as dribbling out the clock.
Yeah,
I really love that. Something has to happen to end the game.
It's pretty cool. There's still a shot clock, but it forces you to think a little bit differently than playing the clock. It's pretty cool.
Man, we've got with the NBA, everyone is aware by now, if you're remotely interested in the NBA, that there is a bubble that all the teams are living in.
Not all the teams
in Orlando. Well, not all the teams. All the teams that were selected to play. All the teams that were eligible to play.
And as I understand it, I'm again much more casual with NBA than you guys are. As I understand it, it was just the teams that were potentially close enough to make the playoffs in the first place.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you were completely out of the picture, then you don't get to play. But right now we've had some very notable events happen. So the Kings had a player that is now, he's in day 6 of a 10-day quarantine enforced because he stepped outside the bubble to get takeout food. Yeah.
I guess, what kind of takeout are we talking about here?
Yeah,
right?
Let's
was it worth it? Are we talking about? if I would cry if he got Arby's.
If it was Wingstop, I get it.
Yeah,
fair enough.
If it was Cane's, I get it.
Yeah,
but if it was, I don't know, if he did Arby's, then
I don't want to shit on Jim. But if it was Burger King, Jim, I'm just not. I just don't understand the
well
Whopper.
Known for my love of Burger King.
Right. So we've got James Harden, Russell Westbrook, both tested positive, so they're in quarantine. It seems like it'll time out to where they're still able to participate in the official first games, but those guys are both out. Harrison Barnes is another notable name. Who has to get a positive test for them to actually either push back the reopening or to shut it down altogether? Or does that happen in any world?
I'd say Pop, man. Pop. You don't have Pop. You don't have no. Hey, I've said this from the beginning, man. Like, I don't care what happens with this season. In my opinion, there's an asterisk on it. Like, when we're talking about legacies here, I understand the world is rooting for LeBron, and I'm gonna miss him when he's all said and done. But I feel like if certain players are not playing, and Westbrook and Harden, chances are they're gonna come back and they're gonna be in there once they hit the playoffs. But there's just an asterisk on it, man. Like,
check this out. Coming from a diehard Spurs fan of whom one of their many titles came from a lockout season.
That's fair. That's fair. I understand. I wasn't there. I wasn't the biggest fan in '99, but as a fan,
you were 11.
As a fan and a basketball player now, like, I'm just telling you, like, the way the stage is set, I honestly feel that if LeBron caught COVID today, and I said it the other week, if he catches COVID today, Adam Silver shuts this whole shit down. It's
But do they?
it's that vulnerable.
It is, but
That's not fair. That's a unique advantage.
it
Because
is.
if I'm James Harden and I just caught COVID, is it the shit's still going on?
All right, here's a good question. When's the last time? And I mean, you guys can feel free to comment on this if you know or if you think you know. When was the last time that a team that was not even in the ballpark? So I'm talking about maybe like top 4 or 5 contenders, right?
Okay.
When's the last time one of those teams won a championship? No, this is what I'm saying is as cool as the restart is and as much money as it's going to make for corporations and for the league, really what it comes down to is Lakers, Clippers, maybe Rockets if you have to throw them in there. The Nuggets have earned that. Then in the East, we're talking about Bucks, Celtics, Raptors, and I really don't think we're talking about anybody else. So you've got about 7 teams with a legitimate
Celtics, maybe.
with a legit. I said that, but with the and some people would say Sixers, but there's a team, an amount of teams under 10 with a legitimate chance, and in my opinion, you have probably under 6 with a legitimate chance to win a 7-game series and to win. So I honestly think this is a harder season. So it's like you can still put an asterisk by it, but it's like that's a harder championship to win for those teams because there is no home court advantage. There is no, it's a neutral site. So there can be an asterisk by it, the same as there is for a lockout season. It is weird, but the show, either the show must go on or shut her down.
So let me try and put a little bit of this in perspective, and it's a different situation. But in baseball, I'm a fan of the Dodgers, and in football, I'm a Redskins fan, right?
Baseball, what's that?
Baseball, it's the stick. Stick
See, we brought Jim on here for balance, people.
Balance.
Like, yeah, that's the only time baseball will be mentioned. Go on.
So in 1981, there was a Major League Baseball strike.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Dodgers won the World Series that year.
Yeah, as I remember. Yeah.
As you remember, that's exactly right. No less of a championship in my eyes. 1982, there was a strike in the NFL. Redskins won the Super Bowl that year. High five. No less of a championship. 1987, there was another strike. Who won the Super Bowl that year?
The Dodgers.
Nope. No. Super Bowl.
Oh.
That's right. The Redskins again.
Oh.
I'm hoping for a strike in the NFL this year. I'm just saying.
Well, there won't be a Redskins team.
So what I'm saying, the Red Tails or the Redskin potato people. What I'm saying is it's no less of a championship.
Yeah.
To me, it just depends. I think there's so much favor that's given to LeBron, and I get it, man. That's your cash cow. And I'm not a LeBron. Like I will tell you right now, LeBron is the best player
in the
world right now.
Thank you.
Right, not the best to ever play, but he's the best in the world right now. And I get why Adam Silver is protecting his cash cow.
I would too, absolutely.
Hey, shout out to Dustin, by the way, who should be rejoining us next week. He is probably at home just green with rage right now.
Dustin needs
about LeBron slander going on here.
Dustin needs to be in the weight room. He doesn't need to be listening to no podcast. Hey, but I do want to. I'm not going to take it back to TBT, but like just talking about the bubble itself and the life in the bubble. TBT they usually paid out $2 million, like you said, but they only paid out $1 million to the winner this year. They spent $1 million on testing alone. Or the safety precautions alone. And that's for, they're not running as many teams as the NBA. They don't have as many participants. But they ran over 2,000 tests in 2 weeks. And they had a lot of success with it. They had a very small positive rate. But taking that life to the bubble, because it does provide like a unique challenge, like you were saying, to the game. Yeah. Like it's not just what happens within those 4 lines. It's kind of like a mental aspect of what are you doing off the court, because you can't just go home to your own bed or do your normal routine and nightlife. How much do y'all think, life in the bubble, how much do you think that's going to impact what goes on court? And let me just give you one example. It was the Nets that picked up, who did the Nets pick up recently? It was K-State, Beasley. And I don't know why, but yesterday they said Beasley was already sent home. I can almost.
I can guess what's going on.
He tested positive. Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. But it does provide a unique challenge as far as like the lifestyle and buckling
Yeah.
down and really being laser focused. How do y'all think that's going to kind of affect these different teams?
I think without any real distractions, I think they're going to get a little numb mentally.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain guys that, I mean, I think that they might thrive on a certain routine, and even if that routine is debaucherous in nature. So like, I mean, what if Harden just comes back? I mean, now he's got COVID, but what if he comes back? And I mean, does the absence of strip club access
Turn him into a
does
competent defender?
Yeah. Does
Could
he
happen.
start guarding people, or actually, I mean, or does he go off and play even better? So who knows? And then guys like J.R. Smith, I mean, he's probably kind of towing a bit of a line because he just got back to the league. But guys like that who are known for nightlife endeavors and for a healthy balance of sport and fun, it's just strange because you don't know if it'll make them play better, if there won't be any impact, or if it actually affects them. And other guys that have a more wholesome, family friendly routine that they can't do while they're in the bubble. It is interesting.
I wish we had some stats from like the Olympic Village that we could that we could reference here. But you do have a great point, man. Like, maybe Adam Silver missed the mark by not allowing conjugal visits. Who knows, right? But there has been. I did see a rumor, and I don't know how true it is. The bubble is supposed to be the NBA bubble in Orlando. It's supposed to be this impenetrable force, and in week 1, there was already rumors that. I don't know if you have an OnlyFans page, apparently you can just get in, right? There's like a back door for you or something,
Nice.
right? No pun intended there. But what do y'all think that is something legitimate? Honest question here. Do you think that is something legitimate to consider? Like, we're going to bring back, 300 plus participants. Do we need to consider that there are needs that maybe it's not traditional to speak about, but like we have to provide for these needs?
Well, I mean, to be fair, they
maybe not provide, but accommodate is a better word.
What do you think? What do you think, Jim? Are they allowing that?
Are they allowing people to sneak in and
right? Are they allowing certain things that maybe aren't publicized to enter the bubble?
I think publicly they have to say what they are saying, but I would not be a bit surprised. But honestly, despite what I said earlier, I really don't think it matters. Especially for except for the wide-eyed youngsters like the first-year guys.
Yeah.
I think the people that have gone through it at least a season, they've developed a routine, and no matter what else is going on, they can follow that routine and be effective on the court.
Such a mature response there.
Well,
Jim.
I'm an old man now. I don't know if I told you about my birthday.
He did have a birthday. I honestly, dude, they're it's hard to say, but you have to imagine there are exceptions being made, and if they're able to test that rapidly, and I would have to say that those guys are not going a couple months without. I would very seriously doubt it.
Well, there's supposed to be like, okay, after 5 weeks, it's supposed to, at that point, like, you're really locked down, right? I think, and I don't know if in 5 weeks the playoffs are going to start or not, but I think there's going to be less participants there at that point. There should be. But there'll be less positive cases for sure, and you kind of have it under control. You're on a routine at this point. I've heard that like after 5 weeks of being in the bubble, that they are going to allow visitors as long as they pass a certain test or requirement. So they did acknowledge that there are needs that exist for these male athletes.
And let me tell you, there are Instagram models and OnlyFans.
Could you imagine what that would do to your OnlyFans account?
Oh my goodness,
right? That kind of publicity.
And to be fair, they've allowed in, I think, 6 barbers and a number of DJs, to kind of, I guess, lighten the mood, make sure guys can get haircuts and stuff like that. So there are specialists that are being allowed in. So you would have to think that eventually some other specialists will be brought in.
Not to be named.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, we're getting towards the end here. I would like to, I'm trying to pick your brain here. So you don't have to keep it short. It's kind of in between short and a rant at this point. We're doing okay. Final thoughts. Anything that's important to you, anything you would like to get out to our dear viewers and subscribers, which are growing. Thanks, guys. Like, share, subscribe, by the way. Jim, we'll start off with you, man.
Well, it's kind of in keeping with what we talked about earlier with the politics of everything, and God, I hate to be a Trump hater, but if anybody saw that press conference he held yesterday
Jesus.
in the Rose Garden, there he was in the shade, and all the reporters were out there in the sun just baking, and the whole thing was just a political. It was a campaign rally. I think he was pissed off about Tulsa, and the mockery he got for Tulsa.
Yeah.
And, all right, you bitches, you sit out there in the sun and you look directly into the sun as you're trying to look at me.
You said true, accurate things about me. Now sit in the sun.
Suffer.
Yeah.
Suffer. Anyway, I just thought that was comical. The whole thing was just a railing against Biden and how much of a horrible person he was and what a horrible China lover he is, and it was just very weird.
Yeah.
Like what an odd, childish thing to do for the president.
Yeah. Closing thoughts, man. I guess we've turned a page from 3-4 weeks ago. Police reform's not really important anymore. We had Fight Island, and now everybody's kind of looking for. I feel like the American public's already looking forward to the NBA reopening, which is whatever. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. I'm not saying it's the right thing either, but it's just interesting. I think as a participant in this entire experiment, I think it's interesting. We'll see where we are next week, right? I think anything can change from day to day at this point, right?
Yeah. Well, man, we appreciate you guys listening tonight. We, again, like, share, subscribe. We're trying to grow this thing. We're trying to grow the community, so to speak. Somebody that I wanted to give a huge shout out to, a story that came out in the sports world, but also in the real world. Kenny Stills, a receiver for the Houston Texans currently, was arrested in Louisville over this past week, protesting with a group of about 90 people at the Attorney General of Kentucky's house. I mean, they didn't break in and kidnap him or anything, but they were protesting outside his house, and those 90 people or so were arrested. I just wanted to give a shout out to Kenny Stills. Just so you know, if you want to talk about people using their platform to affect social change, you might ask yourself, what were they protesting about? They're protesting the fact that none of the killers of Breonna Taylor have been arrested yet. Only one's been fired. But yeah, Kenny Stills, he kneeled in solidarity with Kaepernick as far as to protest police brutality. Got every Miami player on the roster, 60 plus guys, registered to vote when he was playing in Miami. He actively works with law enforcement in every city that he plays in to affect change and to encourage cooperation and understanding. He donated his Man of the Year money to charity, and then also started a mental health foundation. So I can't think of a better example right now other than maybe Maya Moore that we talked about last week, of actually being about what you're talking about. For kind of piggybacking off what you said, for somebody to now that the social media craze is over, to still see somebody who is a very much so a multi-million-dollar talent in the NFL, to see him still campaigning for justice for Breonna Taylor, I was super encouraged by that. And I hope that more athletes and more people with similar platforms will go with that. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Please like, share, subscribe, and also comment with any sort of feedback, any sort of suggestions you would have. If there's something that you want to see discussed that isn't being discussed, or something that you think would be fun to discuss, please interact with the page. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for dealing with the three of us, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Night.
I'm gonna be the first one who can beat it. Yeah. I had hoop dreams, now I shoot threes. Got a little green, but I don't do weed. No perp, no